Welcome guys, Politics Made Simple here, and today I'm going to talk about my 2024 prediction between Ron DeSantis versus Joe Biden, and let's finally start with the solid Biden states. They are Washington, Oregon, California, Hawaii, of course, Illinois, New York, Vermont, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New Jersey, all these really deep blue states, Delaware, Maryland, and DC. Don't let me forget about the 1st District of Maine. And yeah, with Biden being on the ticket, not much would change, but with DeSantis being his opponent, he would likely lose not all, but a decent chunk of those anti-Trump voters that voted for Joe Biden in 2020. They wouldn't be too big a problem for these really deep blue states, so these would likely stay in the same spot. And yeah, so now for the solid and safe states for Ron DeSantis, they are Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, Montana, all these really like deep red states. The Dakotas, most of the districts in Nebraska, Kansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, all these Mississippi, Alabama, southern states as well, Kentucky, Indiana, and West Virginia. With Biden and DeSantis being probably the better candidates between both of their respective parties, and DeSantis having a better appeal in rural areas and suburban areas as well, more than even Trump did in 2020, especially in like suburban parts. It would help him quite a lot. The only minor disadvantage for Ron DeSantis is those Obama working class voters that Trump flipped in 2016 and 2020 that will be kind of hard for him to get. All this brings up the safe states for each candidate to 180 for Joe Biden and 112 for Ron DeSantis. So, getting more interestingly, the likely Biden states are. Let me talk with Colorado first. So, Biden would not get as big of a win as he got in 2020 due to just the appeal of DeSantis in suburban areas, but it would only drop to like 10, 11%. Still go for Democrats, really. Okay, New Mexico. In 2020, Biden did pretty bad with Hispanic communities, and depending on how the Hispanic community votes in 2024, it could change things around by a lot. And they will likely be one of the most deciding voting blocks in 4 years' time. And since we don't know how things will go, I'm just going to give to Biden by around 8 to 9 points, or say percentage. I just don't see a big enough change to make a state like New Mexico flip or become a safe state or something like that. And lastly, for the Democratic states for Virginia and Maine at large, they're really hard to swing in really any recent election, and I just don't see anything that would make them change that much in 2024. Moving on to the likely DeSantis states, let me start off with Alaska. In the last 2 elections, it has slightly dropped support for Republicans, but it shouldn't be a problem for them in 2024. And to be honest, I expect it to be around 9% to up to 12% if DeSantis runs a really good campaign. But yeah, I would put him as a likely state for sure. While for Iowa and Ohio, I'm going to put them as likely. DeSantis will probably make good gains in the suburban areas, while on the other hand, Biden will make some small gains with working class voters, which is why they're going to stay around the same margin, to be honest. I think it's going to be between 7 to 9% if nothing big happens in this election. And it will be really interesting to see how things go. And lastly, for South Carolina and the 2nd District of Maine. A lot like Virginia and Maine's 1st District that I already talked about, they're gonna be the same really in 2024, since I just don't see a way they can swing a lot. And just let me fix this small mistake. And yep, this would actually bring the safe and likely states for each candidate to 210 for Joe Biden and 148 for Ron DeSantis. Okay, getting even more competitive. The races I'm gonna talk about are the lean ones. Starting off with Florida, so DeSantis being the governor from here is of course going to help him quite a lot. I expect him to win here by like, I would say 4%, maybe a bit higher if things go well. He could also win here by like a likely margin of like 5%, but until we have a better sense of what could happen in 4 years' time, I'm just going to put it as a lean state. While for Minnesota and New Hampshire, both of these states were good for Biden in 2020. But against someone like DeSantis, who has a really good appeal to rural and suburban voters, Biden will still win here, but with a drop to like 4%. Same goes for New Hampshire, really. just like a 4.5 maybe. And now for the key state of Texas. In this scenario, it would be around, I would say, 4%, maybe like 4.5 or 4.75 really. I do think both parties with these two candidates would have really high turnouts. And also the Hispanic vote would be really crucial for either candidate, and even more in Texas, since depending where it swings, if it swings to the left, it could make Texas go to like 1 to 2%. But if it swings to like to the right, it could also make it go to like a likely margin really. But I expect it to be around 4.5%. Moving on to North Carolina. So in this scenario, I doubt there would be a big change to what we saw in 2020. I would think that it would probably vote to the right slightly, maybe to like 2 to 3%, mostly due to the fact that Ron DeSantis would do better in suburban areas compared to like what Trump did in 2020. And yeah, now for Nevada, with Biden, it would be better for Democrats. Even if DeSantis makes decent gains here, I just don't see a way in which it will be enough to make it closer or even flip it. I still think it's going to be around maybe 2%. Worst case scenario, like 1.1 or 1.25. I could see maybe it being closer with someone like Harris, but with Joe Biden, shouldn't be a problem really. Shortly for Nebraska's 2nd district, I'm gonna just put it as a lean. It could also be redistricted, which could change how it performs 2024, but until then, I'm just gonna leave it as is. Okay, for the extremely competitive and coin tosses really, that many of you want to know. Also, if you have skipped to the end, go back to listen to my analysis on each state and everything would be quite helpful. Okay, for Georgia, with DeSantis being from a nearby state of Florida, not only would he get an extra boost in Florida, but that would trickle down to like a lot of the South and would be quite helpful for him. And combined with many anti-Trump voters going back to the GOP, it would be kind of close, but I would think with DeSantis on the ticket would go to like a 1%, maybe like 0.85, but his appeal in suburban areas and everything else would help the GOP really. Well, for Arizona, I can't emphasize enough how important it is to get to 74. Yeah, you could say the Republicans tap it more, but for both parties. As long as DeSantis appeals to both sides of the GOP, the establishment and the Trump side, and Biden is not doing well on his regard, DeSantis can win here narrowly. But to be honest, it's really anyone's game. I'd just say that I give it to DeSantis just due to his policies and just him being a really good candidate for the GOP. I'd say he would win here by like 0.25%, maybe 0.5. Okay, well, for the Rust Belt states, in Pennsylvania, as long as an election, whether it's 2024 or really in the future, has okay to high turnout, it will be favorable to Democrats. And the main reason it flipped in 2016 was because it was a really low turnout election. And Pennsylvania is really diverse with big cities to really rural areas, which is why it can swing a lot. But since Joe Biden and Ron DeSantis are really good candidates, in my opinion, there will be a lot of turnout, which would help the Democrats, and they would win here or narrowly. While for Michigan, pretty much known to be the bluest state from the Rust Belt that flipped in 2016 and of course in 2020. I'd give it to Biden by, I would say, a lean margin of like 1 to 2%. There's not much rural places that DeSantis could make gains. He could make gains in like suburban areas, but that just would not be enough really. And Joe Biden would win here. Lastly, for Wisconsin, oh wow, so it's 264 for both sides. Biden could try to keep it, but it would be the most difficult state in the Rust Belt area for him. Plus, with someone like DeSantis, who's gonna get a lot of those rural votes, and who's gonna make gains in the suburban areas, even more than what Trump did in 2020, it would inevitably flip back to the Republicans just slightly. And his appeal to more anti-Trump voters would be quite beneficial to him. And he would win here narrowly by less than 1%. And as you can see, in 2024, if Biden goes against DeSantis, it will be a tight and nail-biting race that could go either way, but I would say DeSantis has the lead right now, with 274 votes for him and 264 for Joe Biden. In order for DeSantis to win, He needs to balance the establishment and the Trump vote. And he needs to be energetic to show off his youthfulness so people compare him to Biden's. And if he does this, I can tell you that would be basically a knockout punch from him. And DeSantis will be able to win against an incumbent. But he needs a lot of things to balance well. Because if he doesn't, then things could change. But yeah, that was it. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share with your family and friends. And see you next time. Bye.